In this Avowed video, we're going to be taking a look at some new gameplay that was just showed by Obsidian yesterday at Developer Direct, kind of breaking it down, going through it, and I kind of want to bring your guys' attention to some things that we learned from this video. If you guys are looking forward to Avowed, definitely want to stick around for this. So the first thing, and probably one of the most important things that we learn in this video, is that the game is going to be coming out in fall of this year. Doesn't have the exact release date yet, but we did know that it was going to be 2024. This has been narrowed down to Q3 roughly, maybe early Q4. So there is a window for the release of this game, and people should be expecting it at that point of the year. It's also coming to Game Pass. So if you're on the fence about this game and you have Game Pass, for Xbox, this might be a great way for you to play it, and you don't have to, spend any additional money. And of course, you can purchase it on Xbox if you don't have Game Pass, and you'll be able to play it on PC if you want as well. So if you prefer to play it on PC, you can. The game is not coming to PlayStation. This is not something that's new, but just reiterating, if you are a PlayStation player, you'll have to play on PC or pick up an Xbox. The next thing that I found particularly interesting is that the kind of general concept of the game or the game's story is that there's some sort of mysterious spiritual plague that's, spread across the living lands. And your goal is to stop that, and you're connected to this in some way. We don't know exactly how, but that's kind of the general premise of the story. Now, the Living Lands is actually a place in Aora, and it's located to the northeast of Adir, and it's not somewhere that we've seen before in Pillars of Eternity or Pillars of Eternity 2. Pillars of Eternity 2 took place in the Deadfire Archipelago, and that's kind of like an island area of the game. And then Pillars of Eternity 1 took place in the eastern portion of Aora, and this is kind of in the north. So this is going to be a whole new location for us to take a look at. So you probably won't recognize, any structures or locations from Pillars of Eternity in this area, although I'm sure there will be references to things that, you did see. And I kind of find this slightly disappointing. I mean, I'm thrilled that it's still in Aora and it's still going to take place in the Pillars of Eternity universe, but I was really hoping that we would see some locations from Pillars of Eternity. Now, it doesn't mean like there isn't the potential that somehow we travel to these areas or something like that. But from what we know so far, the game's predominantly going to take place in the Living Land, so I don't think it's very likely that's going to happen. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of places, or any places really, that we saw in Pillars of Eternity. And I think probably the most important thing that I took away from this video, besides that general concept, is we got to see a lot of it how the combat will work. There are parries in combat, there's blocking, there's dodging. So there is a lot to the actual general combat systems of Avowed. Like, it's not just hold for a block and swing your sword. Obviously, there are abilities and attacks and different weapons and things like that. But we got to see some of that. And we don't know if there's like a stamina system involved in this. The HUD is turned off in the gameplay, so you can't see if it takes stamina to dodge and attack and stuff like that. I highly think there would be. Otherwise, you'd be able to do these things at will unless there was some sort of cooldown or something like that. But it's likely there'll be either a stamina system or some sort of cooldown system, so you can't just spam these things. And something else I find incredible so far, which I really love, is that in the gameplay that we've seen, I've been able to identify just about every single ability that they've showcased. And in this video, we can see Into the Fray, which is a fighter ability. You can see Tanglefoot, which is a druid ability, and Charge, which is another fighter ability. And there's one other ability that looks like it might be a Cypher or a wizard ability that I can't quite put my finger on. But this was also true in the previous video that we showed, and the gameplay that they showed last year. There were a lot of abilities in that footage, and I could identify those as well. So it does seem like the class system, more or less, is going to be in Avowed. And the reason that I say more or less is that we don't know if you have to pick a class, if class selection is part of this, or if there's some broader skill tree that just incorporates skills from Pillars of Eternity in, Avowed fashion that you can mix and match and sort of make your own custom class, so to speak, or your own loadout, depending on what skills that you take in this skill tree. But something that I found really interesting that makes me wonder about this is if you watch the gameplay very closely, you'll notice at one point the player throws Tanglefoot on one enemy, switches weapons, and then quickly uses Charge into another enemy. Tanglefoot is a druid ability, and Charge is a fighter ability. So either this character is multi-classed as a druid fighter, or he's possessing two skills that are of two different classes, which would, again, give you a little bit of evidence that potentially you can pick skills from multiple different classes, potentially even more than two. So we have some suspicions on how that's going to work, but what makes it more interesting and adds another element here is the customizable loadouts that were mentioned in this new video that you can swap on the fly. So it's possible that your abilities are tied to your loadout, and if you swap to an axe or something, maybe the charge ability shows up. And if you swap to your wand, maybe you have these abilities queued up and mapped. So it's possible that you can have many different abilities and they're mapped to the loadout itself. It's possible that the skills are mapped to the weapon type that you're using rather than a class. But we do know that the abilities themselves are based off abilities in Pillars of Eternity. So I'd be curious to see how that all works out. And besides those things, we got to see a little bit more of the Living Lands and what it'll look like visually. It has a very Pillars of Eternity vibe to it, in my opinion, if you're just looking at it. And we got to see some of the enemies in the game and, just combat in general. There were also pieces shown of a quest line and kind of how questing will work. And, it kind of seems like a typical Obsidian game in that regard. You're going to have choices that you can make that affect outcomes and changes the way people perceive you in certain areas. And all the things you really love about Obsidian RPGs are going to be there on the RPG front. So that, I don't think that's like a mind-blowing thing to people, but at least so you know that they are in there and they will be there. And lastly, the last thing you really notice is just the graphics of the game. It doesn't look amazing in my opinion. It doesn't look terrible, but it's not like mind-blowingly good for a first-person game. I know a lot of people have been critical, particularly in the last video we made, of the way Avowed is shaping up graphically. I think if you watch this video, you'll get a better idea of what it looks like so you can set your expectations. But it doesn't look like Avowed is going to win any awards on the visuals department. I mean, it's just kind of not what Obsidian is known for. I mean, their games look good from first person. Outer Worlds look good, but it didn't look mind-blowingly good or anything like that. So I think you can expect kind of the Outer Worlds type quality in terms of what you're seeing from visual fidelity. So that wraps up basically what we learned in that video. And they did mention that there would be more news of Avowed, as we move through the spring. So I can't wait to see more of that. Hopefully get to check that out sometime soon and get you guys more information. We'll keep you guys updated, obviously, on Avowed. I know there are a lot of fans of Pillars of Eternity on this channel, myself included, who at least want to know more about it, even if they're not planning on picking it up or if they're on the fence about picking it up. Obviously, with the news of Game Pass, I think even more people will be playing it than expected. And I would love to hear from you guys. What do you think so far? Did you notice these things, or did you even know that there was a gameplay presentation from Obsidian? What do you guys think now? Let me know in the comments below.